There we go.
Okay, so let's start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending CSBARS June meeting. We are glad to have you. And I would ask staff when they are ready to please take a roll to determine if we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Dean Yaroshek,
Here.
Paul Kramer,
Here.
Dean Keller,
Here.
Dean Marshall,
Here.
Dean Jolin,
Yes, here.
Dean Hunt, not present. Dr. Bolton, not present, but working on attending. We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, we will be talking about the public comment. Members of the public can make written public comments submitted to csbars@calbar.ca.gov email box. Written public comments received by 9 a.m. on Tuesday are distributed to CSBARS prior to the meeting, and comments received after that time are forwarded after the meeting. We did receive two written public comments and were distributed to the committee members. The public comments from Dean Clancy. Before we begin public comments, I would like to remind everyone that under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, public comments must pertain to items that are on the agenda or be related to matters that are within the jurisdiction of this agency. Verbal public comments of up to 2 minutes will be taken now, first recognizing any individuals who signed up in advance using the link on the agenda or by raising hands using the raised hand function on a computer or a *9 on a phone. Staff will share a timer on the screen during the comments. I will now pass it on to Teresa or Natalie regarding if anyone is signed up for public comments.
But we do not have any advance signups. We do have one raised hand, and I would like to recognize Mr. Kai on for a 3-minute public comment.
Can you hear me, Dan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, all members. My name is Kai On from Sacramento. Political power control State Bar of California, Chief Justice, and Attorney General, not to investigate Sacramento DA office and SPD, make up a story that fake killer Mr. Jung So Fong hit and run kill my father Woon Kong On. DA case number 99F08735. I ran to governor's office in Sacramento, but governor's office doesn't take any action. How a state government allows political power to control the government, law enforcement and justice system to commit obstruction of justice activity. Therefore, it leads member of State Bar, Board of Trustee and committee member to speed up and notify California Senate and Assembly to look into the issue. Someone is trying to control State Bar to commit obstruction of justice to cover up a scandal. Thank you for all your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other public commenters.
Okay. So in thinking about the chair's oral report, the thing that has been on my mind as a dean, and I think probably all of the deans and professors and students, really is the future of the bar exam. And we have on the agenda an agenda item that will be discussed today item 2.2 about that. Staff have filed a petition with the Supreme Court regarding the Board of Trustees recommendations for the bar exam in 2028. And so while we wait anxiously, I would, encourage us to think about what information we would need as deans, as professors, as law students, right, to prepare the course of action when the new bar exam is adopted. And thinking about communications from the bar, study materials, what other things would we need to be, I think, better supported so that we can better support our students and our graduates. I know this is a time of high anxiety because there's so much unknown. And this is also a perfect time to think and brainstorm, because we will be meeting again. We will, and so the my encouragement is that we take this opportunity while we wait to think about what would be helpful, etc. The other point that I think is especially now that we're here in June and thinking about the July bar, this next month, the state bar is continuing to fund programs that are companions to schools. There are companions to commercial and personal bar preparation. They are extremely helpful. Just to remind us, the first one, the bar strategies and stories. Now, the program registration for that particular one closed on Monday. I know several of our graduates have signed up. And in the past, I have heard wonderful things from our individuals who participated. This program takes less than 2 hours to complete and is really most impactful when completed as soon as it arrives. And what typically happens is the applicants that register for it will receive that program via email. And I know some schools have incorporated that time into their bar prep timeline to complete the program timely. It's still helpful to complete it at any point of the process, but it is definitely much more impactful early on. The other program that I think is another great resource is the RESET, the Bar Exam Retaker Support Group. And that is open to applicants retaking the bar exam. This is a series of 1 hour weekly webinars that has already started, but applicants can still register to participate in the remaining subject sessions. You can subscribe for updates on the Lawyer Assistance Program website or email lap@calbar.ca.gov. Are there any additional comments from any of the members about these? These were the two items that were heavy on my heart, my brain. Okay, so we will move on to staff report and to item 2.1. Natalie.
Thank you, Dean Yaroshak. I have just one quick announcement. As a reminder, as we shared with you, with all deans in California, but just generally, the Practical Training of Law Students program now has a new name, the Certified Law Student Program, effective June 1st. And as part of that, there are some changes for students who are extending the date over what they were originally approved to do. And there are also some changes regarding the class and first year law students exam requirements for this program. The students are no longer required to be enrolled in civil procedure and evidence, but they are required to meet the first year law students exam requirement, whether through exemption or through taking and passing the exam. Everything that you would need to know is on the Certified Law Student page. Just wanted to make sure that everyone's attention is directed to the page with the new name, Certified Law Student. And this change also allows those in LLM programs or the Law Office Study program to participate for the first time. So that's an expansion of possibility for those pursuing licensure in California.
I think that opens up to a lot more opportunities for students to take advantage of that program, at least in our school, because evidence is a third year course. So I know our students were very happy with that. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
If any, okay. We are moving quite right along. The next item is Staff Report 2.2, which is a report on the status of the future bar exam. Donna, we are all very excited to see you, to hear you.
Thank you, Dean Yarashek. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot more to add than you frankly introduced at the start of the meeting today. But just as a reminder for everyone, the Committee of Bar Examiners made its recommendation at its meeting in April. And when the Board of Trustees met in May, they concurred in the recommendation of the Committee of Bar Examiners for what the recommendation of the Supreme Court should be. And so we filed a petition end of last week, submitting that recommendation to the Supreme Court for the future bar exam. What is that recommendation? The recommendation is that starting in July of 2028, the State Bar administer the next-gen uniform bar exam. The committee and the board also recommended that we develop a California component, but recognizing that we don't have sufficient time to do that and meet our statutory notice requirements, the recommendation is that we develop a California component to be administered as quickly as practicable after July 28, after, of course, meeting our statutory notice requirements. In order to facilitate us being able to make a recommendation to the court on what that component might look like, we asked the court as part of the petition to tell us what subject areas and skills should be tested on that California component, and whether those subject areas should be testing California law or laws of general application. And so at this point, it is in the Supreme Court's hands, and we expect a response from the court in time to make our 2-year notice before July 2028 exam, whatever that exam might be. So we are looking mid-July for a recommendation from the court, so they have sufficient time to consider the final petition that we have submitted. Of course, they have been tracking what we have been doing this entire time, but having the final risk-benefit analysis and the final recommendation will influence what their final order is. The court can order anything, right? Can order whatever it deems appropriate. And the Committee of Bar Examiners and the Board of Trustees felt that the risk-benefit analysis pointed very strongly toward the adoption of the next-gen uniform bar exam and with the added California component. The court may disagree. The court may suggest that no, they would just, after having considered everything, would still like the bar to develop an exam consistent with the exam, with what they had originally ordered in October of 2024. They could order that we do adopt the next-gen UBE and not adopt a California component. Really, they've certainly got the full set of options open to them. And before anyone asks, because this question often comes up, I will never predict what the California Supreme Court might do. But I look forward, as do all of you and all of your students, I'm sure, no doubt, look forward to seeing what the final order of the court is. And as soon as they issue that order, we stand ready to take the next steps to begin implementation, whatever it may be.
Donna, I just wanted to clarify. So what form the California component might take if they order it is still to be decided, right? So
Correct.
it might be given on the same day as the UBE, but it just as likely could be given separately, perhaps even online, and more often, to be decided later.
So yeah, what I envision happening if the court adopts the recommendations of the CBE and the board to do next gen UBE July 2028 without a California component, and then add a California component thereafter. What I anticipate happening is over the course of the next year, the CBE and the board would develop a recommendation on that California component using the subject areas and skills that the court gives us as part of their order, and coming back to the court with content maps for those areas and a recommendation for the delivery method, whether it will be a fully proctored exam, whether it will be an exam to test minimum competence, or an exam that is really designed to ensure familiarity with key California concepts and key lawyering skills. And so we would present probably sort of along the same timeline, present to the court, by June, ideally, of 2027, the recommendation for the plan, have them issue an order for what that California component would be in July of 2027 that would allow us to roll it out ideally in July of 2029. So 1 year after rolling out the next gen without the California component. So that's how I envision the process. Obviously, there may be some shifts in that timeline, but that's how I envision it rolling out.
Thank you. Helpful. Any other questions? Okay. Oops. My screen is doing funny things. The next item is item 2.3, an update on the general statistics reports for the California Bar exam and first-year law students examination. And I believe that Dr. Lisa Chavez will be joining us on this one.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Chavez, and I'm a principal analyst with the Office of Admissions. I'm here to share with you our very close to final templates for our general statistics reports. I'm sure all of you are very familiar that every time we are completed grading and whether it's the bar exam or the first year law student exam, the state bar produces what we call as a general statistics report that we publish online. And these reports are used by lots of different stakeholders. They had lots of different data, and we have many reports online. And after giving all of these two report templates a facelift, really considering language, how we can make things more usable for the public, for our stakeholders, and of course, receiving feedback from our law school deans and our various stakeholder engagement meetings. We're very close to finalizing both these templates. So at this point, we just wanted to share with you how things are shaping up. I'll start with the bar exam template first, and then we'll move to the first year law student. Okay, screen share, here we go. So we anticipate using this template with our forthcoming report on the February bar exam. Those results, as you know, which were recently released in May, and we tend to issue this report around 6 weeks after scores are released. Okay, so let's start with the first table. And I'm just gonna go through just a few of the tables. Okay, so here what we did was, for the first table, and this is really kind of a really foundational table.
Dr. Chavez, can I ask you a favor? Could you make that screen a little bit bigger? I see it's only at 80%. Oops.
How about now?
That's a little bit better.
Okay, great.
That's even better. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So table 1 is really a foundational report foundational table for the entire report. It goes really, really big, high level, and then the rest of the tables are really like subtables of this foundational table. It just talks about the total applicants that take our 2 different exams, and we report out on total applicants, first-time applicants, and repeat applicants, the number that took the exam, the number that passed, and calculate these pass rates. What we added here was a note that describes these exams. This really wasn't in our old report. We thought that, I'm a strong believer that reports should really kind of stand on their own. And so that's new here. Something else that's new for this is that we had in the old template, we had like a little table that reported out on our disciplined attorneys that took the exam and how many passed. And we just, rather than having its own little table, we just added that here. So we'll be filling in that number here. Okay, so that's one update. Another key table in this report is where we report out on pass rates by applicant law school type and the different types of attorneys. And then again, disaggregated by the attempt status. And so if you looked at our old template, all of these categories were just kind of listed. And what we did was we separated out our different categories into whether they were a general applicant or an attorney applicant. So we think that this will better facilitate making use of the results in this table. Another thing that's new for this is that we really cleaned up our definitions of each of these categories. And so we have improved definitions here. Looks like a lot, but again, I really believe that reports should kind of stand on their own. People shouldn't be going looking for information on things. And so here you go. So this is a really strong improvement here. Okay, this is a new table. Not in the sense that it's new information, but before in our old template, we had pass rates by race, ethnicity, and gender identity disaggregated by law school type. And the total for all groups was at the bottom, and it was hard to really find it. And so here we have just a single table that reports out on pass rates for first-time and repeat applicants by race, ethnicity, and gender identity. So this is all applicants, not disaggregated by law school type. That information is still available in separate tables, but this is just a really concise table that you can go to directly. Okay, and I think the last one I wanted to review with you was I'll go straight to the school level tables, in particular for the CALs. Okay, actually, yeah, let's start here with the CALs. Okay, so as you know, this general statistics report reports out on pass rates for the different law schools. And we only report out at the school level schools that had at least 11 applicants. And what the old template had a row at the bottom that said all other applicants. So in other words, if there were like 3 schools that had, fewer than 11 applicants, the old report kind of combined all those applicants and showed the number and had the pass rate for this. Well, that really isn't helpful because we don't know who these people are in the sense that how many schools are reflected, et cetera. So what we did was this table now is only going to report out on, or rather continue to report out on schools that had 11 or more applicants. And we'll have a little note down here that says a total of X applicants who completed the exam attended a CALS that had fewer than 11 total applicants, and they're not reflected in this table. So this way we just give the number to make it clear that that this isn't reflective of all CAL applicants. In other words, so if you don't see your school here, this means that your school either had 0 applicants or it had 11 or fewer than 11 applicants. And then the last table is for the unaccredited. You may recall that these results for unaccredited schools are typically reported out in separate tables depending on teaching modality. So for distance learning, for correspondence, etc. We decided to instead just report out on all unaccredited schools in a single table. Okay, I can take any questions about this template before moving on to the first year law student, if you have any. Thank you.
Quick question.
Sure.
You, in terms of process, you mentioned at the beginning that you have worked with deans and have received comments, suggestions, etc. just interested in that whole process, because this is, these tables are very important.
Sure. Perhaps Natalie could help me out here. These were engagement meetings that we had with law school deans that we started regularly. Natalie, could you describe those more?
Yeah, so Dr. Chavez attended one of those meetings where she previewed what this would look like. And part of what came out of that meeting was a request to also further bring these tables here to CSBARS, and that's resulting in this meeting today.
Is there an anticipation for additional feedback on the tables, or just information?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Is this an information item only, or would receiving feedback from CSBARS members be part of the this meeting?
Yes. Yeah, we welcome your feedback at this time.
Okay.
Yes. Hey, Natalie, will you call on people as we have any comments, suggestions, feedback?
Let's see. I'm not seeing.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any raised hands. Are there any comments or questions about these tables? Or this is also a time, it would be helpful to share with Dr. Chavez how you use these reports at your schools, whether they're shared with your students, how you use them in administration, I think can be really helpful if anyone would like to share what their practices are at your school.
Well, this is Dean Kevin Marshall with the University of Laverne. We take these reports and circulate them across all the faculty and staff involved in student success. Very important that we see the trends, trajectories, and then, even the occasional anomalous outcomes that, and then we try to figure out, is this an anomaly? Is this where does it fit into our program? Is this something that we can control, or is this something where the Dodgers showed up and nobody could, hit the ball for one game? So, very important though. I love this data, and it's very important to us.
Thanks, Dean Marshall.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? This is a great opportunity. I think, providing this kind of data in a clear way is very important. And, the charts look nice and neat, tighter, right? So visually makes it easier to understand. Okay.
I appreciate your words. All right, let's move on to the first year law student template. We anticipate rolling this one out with the June administration of this the exam. Here we go. Okay. Whoops. I'm practicing how to put. Okay. All right. So here, this is the first table 1 in our report. Let me just go through some really key updates here.
I am so sorry to bother you. Could you also increase the?
Yes. Will do. Okay. Here we go.
Thank you.
So again, this is a really key foundational table. We start with the total applicants, the pass rates for total disaggregated by first time status and repeat status. And then we disaggregate it by the law school type. What we did here was we added a little note that says to learn more about this exam and the applicants required to take it, please go see the website. And the reason why we did this here is because in our old template, we had all these footnotes that were like trying to explain why students from this school type had to take the exam, and it was very kind of unwieldy. So, but we have all that information nice and concisely described on our website, so we just refer the reader there. Again, we have definitions of the different types of schools here. Let's see what's new. Okay, one thing that's new here is we've always just reported first-year law student exam pass rates for the CALS unaccredited disaggregated by our teaching modality. There was never a row for the total. So going forward, beginning with June, we're going to just report out on pass rates for the CALS unaccredited as a group. Before, if you look at our old template, there was a category called Other. The Other was really our law office study program participants. So now we're just naming them here in the table. And then we also discontinue reporting on pass rates for disqualified and special students. We will continue to track those for internal purposes. But if you look at our old template, they were like its own table, further disaggregated by the law school type. And those ends were very small. And so just for we're just going to remove it. We had a big discussion about this, and we decided to just track those internally but not include it here. Because that's just it's just another category for eligibility, or rather requirements for this exam. And we figured that this was sufficient information, like the law school type the people were coming from.
Oh, can I ask a clarifying question back to the disqualified, see if I understand, disqualified and special students. The individuals who were academically disqualified from law school, any one of these categories, can take the baby bar, the first year's law students exam. And if those are the individuals that will not be tracked here, those who are disqualified?
They're in here. It's just that they're reported according to the law school that they attended, the law school type. So they're in here, but they're just not their own row as a group of students.
So if they were disqualified, the law school determined that they were not academically meeting the requirements. And doesn't that go against the law school's, I'm going to say, data record that these individuals who were disqualified maybe are not passing the first year exam? And the reason they're not passing is because they were academically disqualified versus the special students who need to take it?
I'm going to turn to my colleague Natalie Leonard to answer your question, or address your to respond to you. Thank you.
So Dean Jurashek, what I would suggest is that we agendize for a future meeting and bring someone from the eligibility team to talk about those nuances, or alternatively, to roll this into a topic that could be a robust discussion as part of the registrar's meeting taking place on September 22. It's not a change in procedure. So Dr. Chavez is talking about a change in reporting, but not a change in the way eligibility is determined. So that might be a way that we could have a richer discussion.
I would appreciate a richer discussion, and maybe in both the September 22nd registrar's meeting and agendizing it for one of our meetings that is not so compact or so packed.
Thank you. I'll make that note.
Thank you.
And I would suggest that we start with the registrar's meeting, only because when you meet again in August, you may be beginning to talk about the bar exam, which will take priority, but please know that this is noted.
This is not as high a priority as the bar exam. Absolutely.
We can balance multiple priorities in revenue.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Dr. Chavez. I interrupted you.
No worries. Okay, okay, this is a new table. We've never reported pass rates for this exam disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and gender identity. So we decided that given that we have this information for the majority of our students, it's time to start reporting this, similar to what we do for the bar exam. So this table really mirrors what is on the bar exam's general statistics report. That's a new table. And then the last table is, if you look at our current template online, again, like we have a table for but we have a table for each of these big 4 categories of schools. And then even for the Cal Unaccredited, there was a table for the correspondence, a table for the distance learning, et cetera. Now we're going to we report out on pass rates at the school level in a single table. But as you can see, it's all the schools will be listed according to their categories. So we think this is a really nice, kind of concise and more tightened up way of presenting this information. See what else I have here. Yeah. Oh, and another thing that's different from here is that if you look at the current template, we report out on total applicants and first-time applicants. And as you know, we're required to redact pass rates for groups that are fewer than 11. And the interesting thing about our old template is that if we reported out on total and we had first time, but we didn't report on repeat, you could figure out who the number of repeat applicants and therefore even their pass rate, because you would simply subtract the number of first time applicants from the total applicants. So to align our to avoid people being able to derive any redacted information, and also to align this report with our general statistics report, this table that reports out on pass rates by law school is only presented for first time applicants and repeat applicants. There isn't a total. There isn't a column for total. Of course, users will be, if both of these categories are populated for a law school, of course, the population, you all can calculate what a total pass rate is. But for now, we will just, the table is going to be changed to only report out on first time and repeat, and not report out on total. So this is the new template. It's really nice and tight. It's only 3 tables. Any page numbers? Oh, 3 pages. So it's only 3 pages. So this is so we hope you're pleased with this improvement. I'm happy to take any questions about this or feedback.
Continue raised hands. I would like to just check in with Dean Dolan, who would be frequently using this report, to see if you have any comments or questions.
Not really. I mean, I'm looking forward to using this template because I haven't used it before. We got raw numbers and we compared those. But I think this is very useful. It's very helpful.
Thanks, Dean Dolan.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. I
Oh,
don't
you're
see any hands. Did I miss? Nope. Okay. So our next item is 2.4, which is a report on the performance targets for key indicators of law school performance. And Natalie, you can take it away.
Thanks, Dean Yaroshek. I have some slides, but before I put them up, I want to talk to you about them and then determine how we'll go through them. So at our last meeting of CSBARS in April, we began talking about the possibility of additional metrics, targeted metrics or targets for reviewing law school performance. And it was agendized for 2 meetings to allow a discussion to take place, but also to allow members to consider the discussion and to allow time for public comment that could be received at this meeting. So the information that I have to share is relatively similar to last time. It's just sharing it at a moment when you've had some time to consider it. So I can quickly go through the slides. The reason we may want to do that is because here at CSBARS, you've been discussing this for the last 2 meetings. It will go to the CBE on this Friday, also for a general introductory discussion, picking it up for the first time after a delay of a number of months in which the committee was giving some thought to what appropriate targets could be. Okay, so let's put the slides up. And just to get everyone on the same page, last time at CSBARS, generally it was discussed thinking about what targets may be appropriate, thinking of the nuances in creating targets that are understood well, and also understanding that no matter what targets may be created, schools may additionally have mission critical additional targets that they track internally. So this is meant really to refresh what we talked about in in April, but also to let you see very close to the exact slides that will be discussed on Friday, so that your comments can be targeted toward not only your thoughts, but also what the CBE will be thinking, so that we can convey that information through the participation of Member Kramer today. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so as just a reminder, previously we've researched metrics used by the ABA and institutional accreditors, such as WASC and the Higher Learning Commission, as well as DEAC. We've also launched an annual law school performance report, and this discussion is taking place just prior to the launch of the current report that'll be released in August. So this is really designed to be a strategic discussion to think about what you'll be looking at, what the CBE will be looking at, and where to focus when we have updated data. On the CBE's work plan, they indicated that they plan to explore whether to develop performance targets for key indicators of law school performance. We've also heard interest at the board level to determine how schools are being tracked and the yardstick of performance to which they are being held. Today's discussion will talk about the law school performance metrics that we have today and a preliminary exploration of what possible targets could look like. Next slide. So just so we all have the same vocabulary, different words we can be talking about are characteristics, which are just innate attributes of schools, potentially based on strategic choices. How many schools are there? What is the enrollment at each school or in total? What is the method of instruction, sometimes called a modality, cost to complete a JD. So these are characteristics that we collect every year as part of the annual report / periodic compliance process. We also look at performance metrics, which are outcomes that look at effectiveness in achieving core objectives. Attrition rate, which has been building, and we've been expanding the categories for a number of years. So we finally have a trend in this area. First year law students exam pass rate, total number of JDs awarded, California bar exam pass rate, and employment outcomes. And right now, employment outcomes are based on a 3-year lag. So each year, we look at the graduating class from 3 years prior and how they've performed in the most recent 3 years, determining whether or not they are now in a JD Advantage job or a job where a JD is required. That lag time allows for enough time for each graduate to have several opportunities to take and pass the bar exam and become licensed. Okay, next slide. An area that the committee's been talking about for a while is expectation with respect to attrition. And if we look at the attrition rates by reason for the last several years, we can see CALS on the left, unaccredited on the right. We relatively flat at the CALS in general if looking at CALS as a whole, but we do see an uptick in unaccredited law school attrition for the first year. And this data comes from the annual reports. Notice this data is the 2024 annual report. 2025 data will be added with the law school performance report that's released in August. And I know that there's been a lot of interest in this area, and I don't know if, Paul, you would like to make any additional comment on some of the thoughts related to first year attrition?
Am I muted? No. Yeah, it's something we're trying to deal with. It's my goal over the past few years has just been to get the committee to, to really wrestle with this and decide what is reasonable. I think we've seen some schools of late where the attrition rates are very high, and we've also heard from some members of the board of trustees that they were just shocked to see those statistics. So I'm hoping that we can come to an understanding of what's a theory, if you will, of what's acceptable, and then make that known to everyone so they can plan accordingly. not necessarily looking at a hard and fast standard like the MPR, but something to aspire to, and once a problem is identified, to correct or at some point, face some consequences.
And also potentially adjusting state bar rules or adjusting state bar sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it relates to just making good choices at the the stage of admitting students. Some, I suppose, some deficits can be corrected along the way, but uh, it can't be I don't think it can be a situation where anybody gets in, and um, although I am also sympathetic to the idea that if people know what the odds of their succeeding are and choose to roll the dice, fully informed, um, maybe that's okay. But we need the whole group to come to an understanding, um, and not just deal with these on a case by case basis.
And toward that, I'm thinking about the admissions process. One thing that's been going on as part of the inspection and annual report process is that schools have now been taking this trended data and looking at not only academic but non-academic reasons for attrition. They're able to go back to the admissions process, even to the earliest points, the communication to prospective students, and determine whether or not they're actively advising students of what will be expected of them when they arrive, what support will be available, and how they will be assessed. Okay. All right, next slide.
Sorry about that. Seems like my computer froze for a moment. There we go.
Thank you. Another possibility for discussion has been the first year law students exam and whether there should be a target passage rate in that area. When this discussion began, shortly thereafter, the format was modified for the first year law students exam, moving from a combination of essays and multiple choice to a multiple choice only format. So the committee's been taking time for that format to become in use for a number of instances, and you can see the past trend here. We've talked about a number of nuances raised by CSBARS for the CBE to think about. For example, the difference in schools that require students to pass the first year before beginning the second year, schools that allow students to continue on through the second year, advising them that they will need to take and pass the exam within 3 administrations of becoming eligible in order to claim that second year of credit, etc. So I think there's been interest in this area, but there's also been understanding of complexity and format change. Okay, next slide. We also continue to share JDs awarded and maybe looking in the future at JDs awarded as well as the number of licensees that result in California. We understand that not every JD graduate plans to license in California, although many do. We see a continued mild growth in the number of JDs awarded for the CALS program, and we see a mild decline in the unaccredited number of JDs awarded. Next slide. In looking at the bar exam pass rates, this takes us just through 2024. The new data will be added in the future. For the last 3 exams, for the last 3 years, we've seen an uptick looking at the July pass rates only, and we see that for both the unaccredited and the CALS schools. But we also note that it's interesting to look at this total percentage pass rate against the overall number of JD graduates versus those who began the program 3 or 4 years later, depending on whether they're in full or part. So we're learning that not only is the pass rate percentage interesting, but also the persistence rate to get to the opportunity to license. Next slide. This is a little bit more about the career data. This is a little bit different than what you see for ABA purposes. The ABA type of career tracking has to do with DOE requirements, and you may have different requirements if you also work with an institutional accreditor. Right now, this is self-reported data, and so at this point, on average, we have just about half of the JD graduates reporting. So this data should be considered very directional at this point. One of the things we've thought about is whether or not this should be a priority to try to improve that pass rate, that participation, so that students can understand that if they undertake and graduate from this program, how likely are they to put this degree to use based on past status of other graduates from that particular school. And this type of data is also on the 6061 disclosure forms that are on the website of each CALS and also each unaccredited law school. Next slide. So some of the things that have been discussed to date are the MPR, which is, of course, minimum cumulative 5-year pass rate. This is a requirement for CALS. All CALS must maintain a rate of 40% or higher. 40% is considered the minimum rather than the target. And we were happy to report that last year all schools met that target. There's been some consideration about whether this should also be required for unaccredited law schools, and if so, what the target might be. It could be possible that what we'll be talking about for most of the rest of the time is informal targets to get an understanding of what law schools are able to achieve on their own and to better understand the nuances in these measures that we've heard about from members here at CSBARS. With respect to access and diversity programs, this gets back to what we were saying before, that we heard loud and clear from CSBARS that each of your schools has a slightly different mission, and you appreciate the opportunity to also additionally specify other targets that might be important to your particular school, your particular mission, your particular modality. Are there any thoughts as to bar exam pass rates here that we haven't discussed previously at the April meeting? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so let's think about targets. So an MPR is an example of a requirement. It's ensconced in the rules. It's reported every year. The thought about a non-binding target is for the CBE to be able to give notice of its expectation, to learn, to understand nuance, and to have a phased approach to be able to improve and continue to enhance the monitoring of the performance of the various schools. So these signals we hope will be helpful to the schools and will help the schools to determine what the proper resource allocation should be at the various schools. And something that might come forth if the committee decides to go forth with performance targets would be expanding the information that we include in the law school performance report to include not only category level information, but also information by school. Okay, next slide. We can go to the next slide. We look like we're a little bit stuck at this point. Paul, do you have any thoughts about the role of a non-binding target?
Well, yeah, it's just my opinion, but it's I don't know if I like the description non-binding, because what I was alluding to earlier was it's a I'd see it more as a safe harbor. If you're under the threshold, um, everything's okay. But if you get above it, we're going to work with you, but expect you to come back below at some point. And if you don't, um, that's probably going to become a compliance issue. Um, just when you call it non-binding, it means it almost sounds as if it has no practical meaning. You can choose to ignore it, or try to, or you can just pay lip service to it, or you can get serious about meeting it. And I think we mean, or at least in my mind, the whole committee may differ, but we mean more than lip service for sure.
Well, here a little bit of the thought that staff will propose is the idea of creating an experiment, the ability to monitor for a number of years, and then determining whether you would want to have a more formal type of metric and what that might be. So this would be a period of time of gathering information. So for example, when we started to phase in demographic information, it took some time to understand, it took some time to refine the language to make that as useful as possible. And the idea behind a target here would also be to be a public signaling of what you're looking for, of what appears to be important, but also to get some experience with those measures.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We have a lot of data already, so I'm less convinced that we need more data collection before we come to an understanding of what we want our requirement to say. Um, and but we'll have to see what the committee wants to do. Again, I keep trying to get them to to make up our minds collectively, and it's a lot of times I find in settings such as this in the committee, some people have a hard time really addressing issues in the abstract, and they need to see a particular case. And and on a more personal level, it's quite often it's how does this affect me? And I don't see that as the best way to make standards. And so that's one of the things I'm fighting against. We need to, but I think we know that, for instance, 90% attrition, that's unacceptable. I think most people would agree with that. And requiring no attrition is equally unacceptable, because even people who are doing fine academically may decide that the law is not for them, or maybe their economic circumstances changes. I think that's where we need better data, is to understand why people are attriting, and that's going to require the cooperation of the schools in the collection of that information and the verification of it.
I think the timing here is also very important because there are many changes going on in the legal education landscape. In terms of what's available with respect to student loans, which are not regulated by the state bar, certainly do affect those schools that participate in the Title IV programs. A significant expansion in online education that grew a little bit last year, a little bit more this year. We know of many more programs that will be launching next year. And so I think that as these changes happen, this will also give you some guidance about how to assess what's going on with the changes in the legal landscape as well. We're having a little bit of trouble with the slides, but we did get through the main portions that I wanted to share. Are there any other thoughts or messages that you want us to take forward to the committee with the area of performance targets? Okay, well, look forward to.
Heather has her hands up.
Oh, please.
Her hand.
Thanks. Yeah, so just a couple of points for clarification when it comes to some of these proposed, I don't want to, I probably shouldn't call them proposed metrics, but some of the possibilities that were raised in the slide. So one of them, included, for instance, whether it's set a particular standard for the first year law students exam, and I was struck by how that slide had the CALs on it, even though even though most, or at least many of the Cal schools don't actually have students taking the first year law students exam. So it seemed to me that was particularly information that's particularly possible for misinterpretation, that very few Cal students are passing the first year law students exam when, and this harkens back to Dean Yershank's comment early, most of the people from Cal's who are taking the first year law students exams, at least in my experience, are people who were dismissed from Cal's. So really their performance shouldn't be attributed to Cal's at all. And I think that has some real potential for misleading if we're talking about metrics for first year law students that would apply to Cal's under those circumstances. And I know we've already sort of teed up that one portion for future discussion, but I did want to just kind of flag it since it was in the slides. With regard to attrition, I know there was a public comment pointing out that we've already public comment pointing out that attrition rates would be problematic based on the different types of schools and types of issues that they're facing. And I think that to me, one thing that both Ms. Leonard and Mr. Kramer said sort of came together in that, yes, there are lots of changes, but there are things that we could be thinking about in terms of tracking reasons, for example, particularly related to non-academic dismissal, changes in financial aid, changes in their personal circumstances that may have an impact. At first glance, that seems like a really great idea, but having already tried to get students to tell us that sort of information, I find it's very problematic because a lot of students don't want to say, oh, well, I lost my job, right? Or, oh, I had this horrible divorce, I'm dealing with domestic violence situation, or whatever thing might be causing them to drop out of school for, non-academic reasons. So I think that is an issue. If attrition is going to become something that we're looking at, I think it is a lot more complicated, both in terms of gathering information and in terms of what steps schools can actually take, other than simply saying, well, we're just not gonna give opportunities to people who aren't in more solid, stable economic and social situations. I don't think that's really where we want to be headed. Academic attrition is a potentially different ball game, though even there, all of those personal situations can also impact academic performance. So I think it is something that, at the extremes, as Mr. Kramer put it, we know, like, yes, if nobody is continuing, there's a problem. But if we set the rule that no one can leave, then that's also a problem. But I think setting a line in between that still allows schools to provide opportunity for people becomes much more complicated.
Dean Marshall, I see your hand.
Yeah, I want to start with, I suppose, where Linda left off there, or just reiterate one of the observations or epiphanies or thought I had while this conversation was going on is when we try to discern whether there's an academic dismissal or a personal withdrawal because of life happening. I realize that we have a lot of students who will DQ and fail because they suddenly found themselves getting cancer treatment and didn't withdraw. So it's interesting that I'm not sure we drill down on the data that specifically, but maybe we should. I mean, we're going to report, I'm just making up a number, 20 students who were DQ'd, and we're not going to tell academically DQ'd, but we're not going to tell you that it made sense from a personal reason because life got to them. So I just throw that out as a matter of conversation, but I really wanted to raise my hand to kind of jump in with what Natalie was saying, Miss Leonard was saying, because if we're going to look at attrition as a metric regarding law school performance, really any of this data now regarding law school performance, but particularly attrition, my God, we are in an enormous amount of change. And that one attrition rate that would have been relevant to us to judge a law school's performance over the past 5 years, we're changing the bar exam for God's sakes, right? And we don't even know how that's going to impact in terms of the curriculum to get them prepared in just 2 years. I mean, any statistician knows that when there is a structural change within the environment with which we're collecting data to measure outcomes and performances, you almost have to separate the data in that type of context. So that's the warning I would give everybody. We're worried about an attrition rate in the middle of this tremendous amount of change within the state bar itself with regard to the eligibility requirements under an examination process. So I don't even know how you would discern yourself at the committee level. What is a reasonable attrition rate when we don't even know what the exam is going to look like, but we know it's going to look differently? And so I think, Natalie, you were kind of making the point that we've got to let this data kind of settle over the next 5 years to get a sense of what's new and structurally going to be different with regard to the system of our legal education. So I would throw a lot of caution to the wind about trying to drill down on some kind of specific metric regarding attrition till we really understand the impact of online education, the impact of a new bar exam, etc.
And one role that a non-binding target could play is a little bit of a rudder through this process. What are we all looking at? What are we seeing? What are we learning about how this is going forward? So rather than simply waiting for a period of time, we can be waiting and learning. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate this feedback and look forward to a rich discussion on Friday as well.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Okay, we just have a couple more quick updates. The first one is a courtesy reminder. So effective August 1st, there is a new piece of legislation that will be applicable to law schools in California, in particular to CALS and ABA-approved schools. All of these schools are required to ensure that they do not prohibit compensation for externships or internships or other clinical experience. So compensation is not required, but it cannot be prohibited either. It's still true that a school may charge tuition, and it would be expected likely would charge tuition for such an experience. So just a reminder to make sure that your programs are in compliance with AB 1155. And then I'll turn it to Teresa to talk about opportunities to be a part of CSBARS.
Everyone, good afternoon. So I wanted to just give a quick reminder that we do have applications open for membership on CSBARS. You can find that application form if you go to the State Bar website and navigate to the CSBARS webpage, which is also just a helpful webpage that you might want to take a look at. You can sign up for email alerts there and find out more about the committee. But those applications are on that webpage and they're going to stay open until June 30th. So just a couple more weeks. Right now, we are anticipating having an opening for an accredited law school dean position. So for those who are listening and are interested and have the background credentials for it, we encourage you to apply. And I also wanted to just remind everyone that we are also seeking interest in chair positions at CSBAR. So our chair positions are 1-year terms. Dean Yaroshek is our chair right now. So for those who are interested, please send a letter of intent to law school regulation at calbar.ca.gov. Again, that's law school regulation at calbar.ca.gov. I think those are my only updates.
Great, thank you. The next topic is the open session meetings of our April 15th CSBARS. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and if there are any corrections at this time?
Yeah, I have one question. Let me share here. If you see the highlighted sentence, I think maybe Cody actually said this, but we seem to have left out the October exam. So Natalie, is the new contract, does that apply to October of this year, or is October of this year under the old contract?
I'm not certain about that, but we can look into that for you, Paul.
Yeah, because I just think, somebody might read this, and not that it matters all that much, but it seems to me it either begins with October of the first year, or if February, that would mean that this year's October was covered by the old contract. So if you could just bring that into line with the facts. Otherwise, I thought everything else was fine.
Okay. Thank you. I ask for a motion with the possible corrections to bring into line with the facts on that sentence.
I'll move, Paul.
Okay. Thank you. And the second?
Second, Dean Keller.
All right. Thank you. Teresa, could you please take a vote on the minutes?
Bolton is not present. Dolan.
Present.
Hunt is not present. Keller.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Marshall.
Yes.
Yaroshek.
Yes.
Okay, with 5 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so we've got a couple of business items, and our first one is item 4.1, which is a discussion of strategies to continue to diversify the bar exam grader pool. And I believe we have Jennifer Garcia from the admissions grading unit to join us.
Yes, and as Jennifer gets ready to come and present to you, I want to talk about this as an example of the success that's coming from the work plan. This is actually an initiative that's been underway for quite a while at the State Bar, but when you were doing your work plan planning, and when Law School Council was as well, you saw that this was an element that was part of the CBE work plan, where you thought you'd like to know more and also to contribute. And so while this was not originally scheduled, this was added at your request, and we're happy to welcome Jennifer Garcia.
Natalie, are you able to see the panelist bar? I'm not able to see that on my screen right now, so I'm not able to promote. There we go.
Okay. I'm going to bring Jennifer into the meeting.
She's already in, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, we're ready for you. Let's see. Yeah, so Jennifer, you should be a panelist now. You can unmute and show your camera and join us.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Garcia, so give me a sec to share my screen. Okay, and share. Okay. Okay. Can I please get a couple nods to confirm that you can see the screen? Perfect. Okay, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Garcia. I'm the program supervisor of the exam grading unit within the Office of Admissions. And thanks so much for allowing me the opportunity to provide an overview of the California Bar Exam Grading Program. So with that, I've prepared a few slides to provide information, and we can follow that with a Q&A slash discussion. So let me go ahead and proceed. So you all know the bar exam is administered each year in February and July, with the applicant results posted to their applicant portal in May and November. Following the applicant results on Friday, the pass-fail list are sent to the law school deans on record either the following Monday or Tuesday, depending on whether that business day falls on a holiday. The deans will then have 2 weeks from that date to submit any allocation change requests. So please note that it's important that any allocation discrepancies are corrected prior to the exam administration when eligibility, or specifically Patricia Salazar, sends the preliminary allocation list, rather than waiting for the pass-fail list during the results. 4 to 6 weeks following the results, the individual law school supplemental statistics and the applicant score reports for applicants who were unsuccessful that gave us permission to publish their scores are mailed to the law school deans on record. Okay, so talking about the grader pool. So since the transitioning from in-person meetings to remote teleconferences, particularly from paper answer booklets to electronic grading in July 2019, our grader pool is no longer limited to attorneys located in Northern California or just the Bay Area. Previously, our graders were primarily local due to budget considerations and exam security. They were required to travel to meeting locations, review physical materials on site, and grade boxes of answer booklets, which they transported from the office to their homes and then returning it back to the office or one of our secured drop-off locations. So with everything since July 2019, our orientations, our calibration sessions are now conducted via Zoom, and our exam answers are accessed and graded through a secured grader portal. As a result, our grader pool now includes attorneys from diverse professional backgrounds, varying in years of experience, representing a wide range of practice areas, folks in criminal law, family law, as well as private and public sectors and small and large firms. So this is the minimum qualifications, which is also posted on our website. But basically, to apply to be a bar exam grader, you just have to be in good standing, licensee with the state bar, be admitted for at least 1 year, before being selected to grade. So for example, if you pass the July 2025 exam and you're applying to grade the July 2026 exam and results came out in November of 2025, you wouldn't be selected because you have not been admitted for a year. And a couple of the conflicts of interest would be, you know, not being professionally affiliated with a law school or bar review course, or have a relationship or know an applicant that will be taking the exam that you're selected to grade. Okay, so some of our recruitment efforts. So because our greater interest forms, aka applications, are specific to each exam cycle because of the varying mandatory grading cycle period, as well as the calibration meetings, our recruitment efforts are conducted primarily through email and social media. So our staff, specifically the grading unit, maintains a solicitation list that includes individuals who have previously expressed interest, as well as our seasoned returning graders. We also keep a list of bar associations and individuals who are referred to us. All of these folks are then on the list to receive an email which contains a link to the greater interest form and relevant dates. Most recently, we expanded our outreach to include the certified specialists who have expressed interest in grading. So this gives them the opportunity to grade twice a year rather than every other year, since the legal specialist program is only every other year.
And Jennifer, I just want to check
Yes.
in. What we're seeing is the cover slide. Didn't know if you want to show us additional.
The cover slide. Oh my gosh, wait, are you not seeing CBX Grader Recruiter recruitment?
We are. We're
Okay,
seeing
yeah.
the recruitment slide. We're okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not one to put a bunch of text onto a slide, so just bear with me. Okay, so I believe I was talking about how we've recently added the certified specialist to our solicitation this cycle. And we also collaborate with our communications department to develop meeting or promotional materials, such as a grader flyer, which the link is provided here. And in addition, the grader interest form, as well as the flyer, is promoted on the social media platforms on a weekly basis until the deadline. Okay.
And when is that deadline? Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. It's actually on this slide.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this about wraps it up, actually. So this is my last slide, and basically these are the resources of where you can find how to become a grader, links to like the grader interest form, the minimum qualifications, compensation information. If you cannot find information on these resources, please feel free to email us at admissions@calbar.ca.gov. Or if you have referrals, you can also submit them that way, and then we can go ahead and send out direct links to the interest form. And if you happen to know anyone that's interested in grading this upcoming cycle, the July 2026 application is still posted, and the due date is going to be June 21st of 2026. That's a Sunday. With that pretty much wraps it up. So leaving time for any questions. Okay, let me stop sharing.
I think we have a question from Paul.
Yeah, a couple. So describe the life cycle of a grader? My understanding is that they apprentice first. So
Yes.
they're not really they're practicing with live ammunition, but they're not the first time they're grading, they're not they're at no risk of having an explosion damage them, right? Or damage the candidates.
Right. So anyone that's joining the grading program for the first time, they all serve as apprentice graders. So an apprentice grader is still required to commit to the entire grading cycle, although they're not technically going to be promoted to grade. So they still have to commit to going to the orientation, doing the pre-grading assignment, attending all of the calibration meetings, as well as the independent tentative grading, which occurs after the first calibration. So this is to make sure that, they go through the entire process and maintain calibration, and then they're evaluated after their service, and the supervising edge team for their question panel will then determine whether or not they can come back and promote to a grader or if they need additional training. So then if they do reapply the subsequent exam, they may be slotted as a backup grader. But again, it depends on how many interest forms we get, the space available, and so on. But you're right, Paul, they are not grading their first time.
Yeah, in any way that affects anyone. Do you have any thoughts, if you've even looked, about how switching to the next gen bar exam might change our program? I understand we still provide the graders, and there's calibration processes that are similar to ours, but it would be done on a national level as opposed to just California. Do you expect that to change the program, or have you not had a chance to look into that yet?
No, I mean, we haven't really gotten there, so I think the options are still being explored, so we'll probably, or I'll learn more as you learn more.
Thanks.
And don't
Jennifer,
see
John
any.
Dolan, could I get a copy of your slides?
Yes, they're actually,
Natalie, I'd like to have a copy of all the slides today, if you would mind arranging for that.
Yes, they are posted to the agenda on the website, and so you
Good.
can absolutely access them there. And then,
Good.
Jennifer, I want to just underscore one point. We now are diversifying our pool, diversifying the practice, etc. Can you talk a little bit about the commitment to ensuring that, regardless of background, calibration is used to result in consistent grading pressure?
I think I'm gonna punt that over to Christina, just because I missed a portion of it. Sorry.
Okay.
So during our calibration process and then continuing on through the entire grading cycle, our staff is behind the scenes running grader statistics. So essentially, we are comparing you to your other graders within that same question panel, and we're comparing you to the MBE. The MBE we look as our stable force. That's what we scale to. So we run what Jennifer had previously mentioned was tentative statistics before we even start grading. And then after we do start grading after the second calibration, we're running real-time grader statistics, just making sure that everyone stays calibrated. We do other things behind the scenes as well, like we send our low-scoring answer files over to the supervising edge team. They look at the low-scoring answer they look at the low scoring answer files to make sure that those are truly worthy of receiving lower scores. So we're doing a couple things behind the scenes just to make sure everyone's grading to the same standard.
So it's a combination balancing diversity and consistency.
Correct.
Okay. Dean Keller.
Thanks so much. I'm just curious if you have any stats on the diversity. I mean, I heard mentioned of being diversified, especially in practice areas and that kind of thing, but do you have demographics or other data that you can share about the recent grader pool?
So at this time, I don't, but this is information that we do collect, and we can probably put something together for to be presented in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Dean Jarashak?
All right. So we now go to our last item of business, item 4.2, which is further discussion of the proposed revision to the unaccredited law school rules and guidelines. And we have had multiple discussions on this, and all of the documentation and the proposed feedback, etc., is posted on the agenda as well. But I will hand it over to Natalie.
Okay, thanks, Dean Yaroshak. So in this meeting, the theme is back to the future yet again, because these proposals are worthy of time and consideration. So last meeting in April when we were together, CSBARS discussed the proposal for the unaccredited law school rules. This proposal was something that was created in part with significant input from CSBARS over the course of 2024 and presented to the committee in 2024. At that time, the thought was to hold these rules pending further study of the eligibility rules and how they might interact. That study is still going on, but there are several potential improvements to the unaccredited rules that you've been interested in, that the CBE has been interested in, and we believe that those can go forward without any conflict with what changes might happen with the eligibility rules. So this PowerPoint is very similar to what you saw in April, but I just want to preview you the posture of this discussion relative to the CBE. So let's go to the next slide. And in my case, oh, okay, I am seeing the next slide. Terrific. Okay, so these slides are slightly updated so you can see the wording that will be used at the CBE meeting so that you can ask your comments and questions. And so Paul mentioned earlier some of the questions that were posed by the Board of Trustees back in the end of 2024 and beginning of 2025, but we also have a number of new members on the CBE. So this is an opportunity to talk to them about why there is an unaccredited program, should and how this program exists, what is needed to regulate the program effectively, and also how to adjust to modern trends in legal education and accreditation. So next slide here. As you know, this is a process that's been going on for a while based on things that have been thought about, talked about. Staff has collected all of the comments and questions that came from you and also from the CBE over the past several years. And this is just recounting the progress that you know very well. And the timing is what we talked about last time. The committee will be discussing just generally the rules at this time. They'll be discussing them with more detail and further input from leadership and general counsel in October, with a goal of potentially bringing forth a recommendation to the Board of Trustees in October, the October CBE meeting. You notice what's not right now scheduled is the incorporation of any of the types of metric targets that we talked about earlier. That's thought that will run on its own track in its own time frame that will allow for more study. Okay, next slide. This is proceeding according to the work plan for CSBARS to discuss in April, June, and August. CBE is being refreshed and teaching new members in June, reviewing in August, sending a recommendation up to the board in October. Next slide. We have the full rules proposal, which I'm not going to go to at this moment, but I want to make sure that all of you know that this link is here for the public, but also for members. And it shows all of the redlined proposals, which I will go through in concept in the next slides. These are the concepts that we talked about last time, but now you're coming at them having had several months to refresh and remember. So we just want to make sure, I'll recap the feedback we received so far, and then you can let me know if you've got other thoughts or questions that have arisen in the meantime. We also now have the benefit of Dean Dolan joining us, experienced in currently operating an unaccredited law school. Okay, next slide. So these summarize the key changes that are in this rules proposal. It's possible that some or all could be adopted or even potentially none. One is to streamline the non-compliance process. The purpose is not to make it faster per se. The purpose is to reduce duplication. Right now there are several duplicate steps, so that is time without value for the schools, and we think that we can streamline that process for you, much as was done with the accredited law school rules. And so the proposal to change is relatively similar to that. We've also learned that more standardization is needed in the area of financial disclosures now that there are more formats of schools than there were previously. Previously, when these rules were created, the schools were all standalone, and now they may be part of a larger university or a generalized group or various other entities that we hadn't seen before. We also received some requests, largely from CSBARS, to clarify the requirements as to when major changes were required. And very often, these major change motions really are for the benefit and protection of the school. Quite often during the motion process, where staff is able to spot potential compliance issues so that they can be prevented as the schools go forward and make the changes that work with their strategies. There's also some thought about requiring a formal student complaint process. There are some new items as well. The first one is emphasizing the primary purpose of supporting students to take the California bar exam and license in California. We're aware that this is against a backdrop of discussions in other states expanding potential acceptance of Cal's graduates or unaccredited law school graduates for their bar exams. Modernizing law school categories, and this is a place where we particularly need your feedback. We'll talk about in detail potentially replacing the current 3 categories with 2 choices, synchronous and asynchronous. And then also expanding acquiescence requirements to include non-JD programs at the law school. Just to confirm, the regulatory oversight of the State Bar applies to the JD program, but the committee does require review at the acquiescence level to other programs in the law school to make sure that they are not damaging to the JD program. Next slide. Okay, we'll spend several slides on this concept. I think this might be the most important change, where there is the most change versus what you see today. But it's critically important that if this change is recommended, that it reflects something that will work for the schools and can be implemented. And there is still room to modify this right now. So currently, eligibility to take the bar exam for unaccredited law schools derives from the law school having a program that is in compliance with Business and Professions Code 6060. For those wanting the specific pin site, 6060E2A and D. So the wording of the statute requires either 270 credit hours per year for 4 years, in what has historically been a fixed facility, a brick and mortar building, or 864 hours of preparation of study per year, with a portion of that being delivered. At that time, it was meant to be correspondence. these rules were created pre-internet. Internet delivery was not possible. So it has been true that differently than accredited schools, unaccredited schools choose a primary delivery method, and this choice governs the hours requirement. Right now, under the rules, there's a fixed facility requirement, the 270 credit hours, and then the 864 hour per year option is broken into two possibilities: correspondence, which can be fully asynchronous, and distance learning, which has to have at least 135 hours of live learning per year. Next slide. So let's talk about how this could change. We want to modernize these categories and better sync with 6060, have two categories. Compared to when these rules were written, the ability to deliver instruction in a brick and mortar building versus in interactive format, much like we're using now, has really changed. And so the thinking here is to break the categories not so much into fixed facility, correspondence, and distance, but instead to indicate whether the instruction is largely live or largely asynchronous. Let's go to the next slide so we can see how this looks graphically. So this would mean that schools that are now fixed facility schools would go into the synchronous category. Schools that are distance learning would have a choice depending on whether they deliver live or they deliver on demand, whether they go into synchronous or asynchronous. Correspondence would move to the asynchronous category. Let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about thresholds. Oh, actually, let's go back. Let's stay on the picture. Yeah, let's go back to the picture slide, just one prior. Yeah, there we go. The thought here with the threshold would be 80%, that at least 80% would need to be in the synchronous or the asynchronous modality. Currently, the rule states primary, but when primary was written, that really was not meant to be 51%, 49%. It really was meant to allow an occasional gathering for an asynchronous correspondence program, etc., or occasional reading programs for a live program. So the thought here is to set at 60%. We understand that accredited law schools have additional flexibility relative to this, but it's very important from an eligibility point of view that the category clearly falls within either sub A, 270 credit hours live per year, or B, 864 study hours per year. So that's why there is a more firm choice here. And is there any thought about the 80% threshold and whether or not that is the right number? Dean Keller.
I'm just not sure how that is 80% is being applied. Are you saying if I have an asynchronous program, then I have to go into each course, and each course will have to be 80% asynchronous, and the synchronous activities can only be 20%, and then what counts in terms of activities? Is it just required meetings? Is it optional meetings? Is it Zoom office hours? Or is it that within the program, you have 80% asynchronous courses that can be delivered in whatever blended modality is most effective for learning, but 20%, up to 20% can be synchronous, for example, entirely in-person live, Zoom delivery, for example. I'm not sure where the 80% how it would be calculated.
Sure. Basically, it's likely going to have to be at the program level. Part of the reasoning is that for the eligibility team to do reviews efficiently for students at these schools, They will not be able to do a personal inquiry of each student and each student's study in that manner. So it's likely to be at the program level. And historically, the schools have had to make a choice. And historically, they've operated at more of 100% level or nearly 100% level for each of these. And if they decided to go forward to move into the accredited CALS portfolio, they would have more flexibility. But for a school that's starting, and this is the starting block for many schools, it would be at a more global level, so that just by looking at the transcript and the materials completed, eligibility could interpret a transcript. Paul.
Yeah, a couple things. Yeah, also the hours they differ between the two paths. I think for synchronous, we don't count any time studying prior to the class, the reading for class, but I'm assuming that we presume that students aren't just showing up cold, and I hope that the schools embarrass the hell out of them if they do, if they haven't read the materials. I mean, movies have been made about that. But so that's one issue. How do we deal with hours when, say, a synchronous? Do we need to track that, or are our assumptions considered reasonable, and that's not a problem we really have to verify?
Part
I
of what
think,
we look at during the inspection process.
yeah, but you don't really know if a student, just shows up for class and uh, hasn't read the materials. Anyway, that's one issue. Another is at our April meeting, the committee considered some of this, and we were asked to forward to the Board of Trustees a proposal to amend this portion of the eligibility rules to make it more consistent with this new paradigm we were talking about. And because I had some issues with some of the details on the bar rule portion of the package, we were asked to split the change to the statute off, and we did vote to advance that forward. But subsequently, I learned in reading the materials for our meeting on Friday that staff ultimately decided not to put that in the legislative package this year because they didn't think there was time to get it in as part of the fee bill. So that's not going to go forward until at least next year and not be available probably as an actual change to the law until the end of 2027. Does that affect our ability to make these changes in our unaccredited rules, Natalie?
That's a good question. That is actually something that we looked at, and we don't believe so. Reason being, this would not change effectuation of anything in the statute as it is now or as it would be going forward. It does use different names, synchronous and asynchronous, but it implements them consistent with the statute right now. So it would be fine to go forward even if that proposal is held and no decision has been made by the legislature. They're not required. That's not required to move for this to move.
Okay, and I think it might have been Dean Marshall last time suggested that there are schools out there, maybe even his, where 80% was going to be a problem. Am I remembering that correctly,
Well,
Dean
the
Marshall?
good news is that that's in that's in the CALS portfolio, so that won't be the case. If there would be any accredited school that would be having an issue right now, most likely they would be having an issue largely with statute compliance as well. And we would suggest as part of this that we sit down with each of the unaccredited schools just to have a personal meeting to confirm. We think right now that all will fall within this, but that's an additional check we can do.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, let's go back to our slides. Thanks. Okay, let's go forward now. Another concept we'll be talking about generally is the state bar's goal to support licensure in California. We're seeing a lot of change and a lot of possibilities in this area now. We're seeing online education making it more possible to enroll students who don't have the intention to license in California and potentially who have the possibility to license elsewhere. We've seen programs that express an interest to focus on recruiting students outside of the US. We've seen potential bar exam and actual bar exam eligibility in some other US jurisdictions, though those are not guaranteed and the state bar doesn't warrant that they will not change. And so something to think about as this goes forward is that the state bar currently subsidizes law school regulation as part of its mission to support licensure in California. So an investment question for the committee will be to think about whether schools should support California licensure, and by that service to Californians needing legal assistance, or if it should think more expansively, schools setting goals to enroll students from any geography, and whether this should be considered when fees are set. Is subsidization still appropriate? Is subsidization at this level still appropriate? The fees are set for this year, so I don't expect a specific fee discussion, just a little bit more of a directional discussion and a desire to follow the trends in this area. And then there's also the role of schools cited in California, but recruiting largely elsewhere. Next slide. So this is some wording that we brought last time to talk about for the rules proposal. Just reminding you here, talking about that the operations primarily support the purpose of offering a JD program, qualifying a student to take the California bar exam. And we assume that the committee would continue to make sure that every JD awarded would have all of the qualifications for California eligibility. Next slide. I mentioned before the non-compliance process. Right now, a school coming out of an inspection with a non-compliance issue goes through a warning level letter process that largely mirrors the non-compliance process, and as a result, they're required to take steps twice. We think that using the accredited process and taking out that duplication could improve results. Also, there's a modernization step right now. A court reporter may be used for the hearings related to this, and now the possibility of recording or other means of keeping records would be added as well. Okay, next slide. There's also a lot of information clarifying existing disclosures. There's been a lot of discussion in recent years about what it is that unaccredited law schools are responsible to do and to share with students at the beginning of the start of the JD program, as well as each term. And so this is spelled out more clearly at this time, now that more unaccredited law schools have more schedules than they did when this was created. When this rule was created, nearly every school ran one cohort per year, starting in September, but now many schools run multiple cohorts, and so further clarity was needed. Okay, next slide. We also talked about the need to enhance the acquiescence requirement because we're seeing many more types of programs, certificate programs, micro-credentials, etc. And the committee would like an awareness of what these programs are and that they do not result in an under-resourced situation for the JD program. Okay. Let's go to see if there are any questions or thoughts. Let's bring the slides down. These are the concepts that we discussed last month, but are there, or last meeting, are there any thoughts or questions? Okay, well then, I also encourage you to join the committee's discussion on Friday and look forward to bringing a slightly modified proposal back with any of your comments as well as those that we receive from the committee on Friday and the Office of General Counsel.
Excellent.
Great. Wow, 4 minutes. Great job. Once again, we are on time. Are there, I don't want to cut off immediately. I thought I didn't see any hands. Okay. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and the meeting is adjourned.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.